Can you guess which of these clips was shot on the iPhone 15 Pro Max and what one on a $5,000 camera? Well, actually, they were both captured using the iPhone. Because getting pro level shots isn't just about the device that you are using, it's about knowing the tricks that makes your footage stand out. So as you can see, the iPhone actually holds up pretty well against my professional camera if done right. So let's figure out how to close this gap by starting off with a bad frame and fixing it step by step. So how can we go from something like this to something a little bit more like this? So let's go through the changes. So sometimes it's as easy as just turning the camera and adjusting the height a little bit and taking a look at the grid and applying the rule of thirds. I explained this in my iPhone photography video, but the same applies to video as well. If you have a person in your image, make sure that their eyes are on that second upper line. Maybe even more important is the background. Because as you can see, the background is forcing you kind of to look at me, because I made use of leading lines in this image, which makes this frame easier to follow and nicer to look at. This doesn't at all mean that you can't be creative with your shots though. Because at the end of the day, the rule of thirds is just a suggestion on how to frame your shot. But that doesn't at all mean that you have to follow it strictly, because rules are meant to be broken, baby. Let's talk about exposure. In most images, there are very bright parts and very dark parts. And it's important that both of them look nice. Make sure that you lock your exposure so it doesn't go all over the place if you switch from a bright to a dark spot. Switch your shots up. Include wide, medium and close shots to give you a variety and make your videos more interesting. If you want to get the best out of your iPhone, you have to change just a couple of settings. Turn on the grid and the level if you want to, go into formats, select most compatible, go down to Apple ProRes and select log. This will allow you to have the most control later on when color grading. That's basically already it. Stabilization. Make sure that you are very deliberate. Gosh, I'm getting blown away here. Make sure to be very deliberate between stabilized shots and handheld shots. Because there are situations that call for both of them, but just make sure that you can see the difference and it makes sense. If you want to have the best experience recording on your iPhone, it is best to use a second-party app like the Blackmagic Camera App, which allows you to have so much more control over your footage while recording and also when editing later on. So the Blackmagic Camera App, highly recommended. Let's talk about white balance. If your footage ever looked too blue or too yellow, that's probably because your phone didn't really know what white balance to use. And white balance basically is just the color temperature of the light. Whether it is outside or inside, all light has a different temperature. If you ever think, hey, that's way too blue or that's way too yellow, this is what you have to adjust. It's called the white balance. Let's talk about frame rates. Yes, slow motion is cool, but whenever not needed, high frame rates and high shutter speed can look a little bit confusing and at times is what makes iPhone footage look like iPhone footage. So if you can, shoot with a slow shutter, and the frame rate I'd recommend for iPhone is 30 frames per second, because the 24 just kind of looks, it's just not smooth. Saturation and contrast. It's important to find the line between too much saturation and not enough. And the same thing goes for contrast. This is too much, this is not enough, and this is just right. Alright, so now let's grade this log footage to turn it into this. So let's go into editing and color grading, which is gonna give your footage that extra kick and get it to a pro level. Welcome to the editing room. Let's go into your editor of choice. I'm using DaVinci Resolve because it is my favorite. If you followed all the steps correctly, your footage should look something like this now. It's very gray and doesn't look that nice, does it? But actually, this is exactly how we want it, because this now contains a lot more information. There are a couple of different ways on how we can get color into this image. Now, one will be just to play around with these sliders here until you get something like this. The correct way to do this is a little bit different. So what you would do is you select the Apple log here, and then as you can see, it instantly transforms it. This doesn't look very great, but now again, we can adjust all the different levels and make it look nice. So color grading is a science in itself, and you just have to practice and find your own style. If any of you want me to make a video on how to color grade like a pro, of course I would do that, but for now we're gonna leave it at this. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.